recording, and I'm going to turn on the transcript.
Transcript should be enabled already.
All right. Well, good afternoon. We're ready to get started, right, Fazil and Peter?
We should be good to go. I'm promoting Richard Tornice now.
All right.
And take it away, James.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Broward MPO and Broward County Safe Streets and Roads for All solicitation webinar. We're very pleased with the level of interest in this upcoming solicitation, and we wanted to share some information with you all about what you can expect to see in the next few weeks. We do have a chat open, so if people have questions, please post your questions into the chat, and we will try to address those either in writing or in the webinar. So we'll be going from there. Just a sec here. And now, there we go, trying to advance it. All right. So today, the main presenters will be two of us from the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization. I am James Cromar. I'm a Deputy Executive Director working on federal grants. We also have Fazil Qureshi, who is a Transportation Engineering Project Manager here at the Broward MPO. And on hand as panelists, and they'll be available to answer questions, are some of our partners from Broward County. So we have Carlos Acosta, Mintang Lee, Josette Severin, and I believe we're expecting some others, including Richard Tornice and possibly Gretchen Cassini. We have been working together for the last almost a year, pulling together the application and then initial approaches for the how we were going to partner and move forward with this grant. And we wanted to share some of that information with you today. On our agenda, we have a few main points that we want to cover. First off, we want to talk about some of the existing conditions in Broward. Some of you may be from locations outside of the state of Florida, outside of South Florida. So we wanted to get you a little bit familiar with what the lay of the land is here. We want to talk about what is Safe Streets for All, Safe Streets and Roads for All, technically ASS4A to save some ink and speaking time. Give a little bit of description of the project that's coming up, and then talk about a procurement schedule. And we will have time afterward for some questions and comments. For those of you that are or are not familiar with Broward County, Broward is in southeast Florida along the Atlantic coast between the ocean and the Everglades. We are between Miami-Dade County to the south and Palm Beach County to the north. And even though we work as a region and people are traveling between all the different counties, we do have certain governmental functions that have us focus on Broward County itself. The total population of Broward as of our application in 2022 is 1,930,000 more or less. And our calculations of the percent of the population that's in underserved communities is about 28.27%. As we deal with Broward County and our different issues here, the reason we are interested in doing this a safety action plan is that we have serious issues with safety on our roadways. 85% of all fatal and serious injury crashes occur on 8.5% of the streets, which is an interesting statistic and will be helpful as we go forward. Our roadway fatalities are among the worst in the US, not the worst, but we're still in bad stead. We have average of 1,126 fatalities per year. Average annual fatality rate 11.7 per 100,000 population, and we've had 64 rail incidents since 2018. So we have a number of issues that we're concerned with. As we go forward, we're going to refer back several times to the website that we have for the Broward MPO. You can use the QR code to get to the website, or also have the link here. We will be posting this webinar. A simplest way to remember this, though, in case you don't have the link, it's looking at browardmpo.org and then go in and look under our major initiatives. We have Safe Streets and Road for All. And so there's a lot of information that's available there. Also, for all the participants in the webinar today, we will be sharing the names and then some information there to connect. A major idea then, as we're moving forward, we've had a lot of issues with safety over the years here in South Florida and in Broward, and so death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Taking that as a a tenet as we move forward. That's something that we want to see reflected in the work that we do over the next couple of years to get this safety action plan, and then also the implementation going for the future. So what is Safe Streets for All? It was started off as a discretionary competitive grant program that's part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so the federal government allocated $5 billion over the next 5 years to address this. We applied for the cycle 1. Currently cycle 2 is open for applications. And we are hoping to be in line to apply for some implementation funds before the 5 years are up. The ASS4A is dedicated funding for safety projects, again, addressing fatalities and serious injuries on roadways. There were 3 types of grant opportunities through the discretionary grant program. There was an opportunity for an action plan for communities that did not have an action plan in place, opportunities for a supplemental action plan to augment the plan that might have been in place, and then also funding for implementation grants. All of these, though, would require 20% local match. So the reason why the Broward MPO applied for a safety action plan was that we did not have a comprehensive safety plan that met all the requirements. In the notice of funding opportunity posted on the USDOT site, they had a list of criteria for what would qualify for a comprehensive safety action plan, and we did not tick off enough of the boxes to qualify. We had some safety plans that we had done, a complete streets master plan, but it did not contain enough of the analysis related to safety and equity that is part of the requirement now for the Safe Streets for All. Broward MPO also chose to go after this grant because we have a history of working efficiently and effectively with competitive federal grant programs. The Broward MPO took the lead in this partnership with Broward County because MPOs were eligible to receive $5 million for the grant, as opposed to local governments that could receive only $1 million. So we were able to partner with Broward County. We'll be providing a local in-kind match. The purpose of the comprehensive safety action plan is to look at safety needs county-wide. So we're not focusing on certain types of roads. We're not focusing on certain communities. We're focusing on all of Broward and determining where it is that we need to be giving more attention, where it is that the safety issues are greatest, and where it is that we can be make a bigger difference. And once we have the safety action plan complete, this will allow the Broward MPO, Broward County, and our municipal partners to apply for implementation grants. So we need to have the action plan finalized and approved before our partners can then use that to apply for implementation grants. We're hoping in the 2025 cycle. So it's been a long road to get us to today. We applied last September, October for the grant. We received official notice on January 31st, 2023 that the Broward MPO and Broward County had received the award. We executed our grant agreement with FHWA on July 5th, 2023. So basically at the start of our fiscal year. We've done an amendment to the Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP, which is the Broward MPO's 2-year budget. We have developed a memorandum of understanding with our partners at Broward County. And so that has gone to the MPO board for approval, and will go to Broward County Board of County Commissioners in August. We are doing a TIP amendment that will be coming up in September, August, September, to document the funding coming through. And then we are going to be starting the official procurement process. This meeting today is kind of a precursor to actually getting the procurement going. With that, then let me hand it over to Fazil.
All right. Thank you, James, for all that information. So to understand what an action plan is, I think it's very important to know what USDOT wants an ASS4A action plan to entail and their priorities for it. So the priorities that were identified by USDOT were to demonstrate engagement with a variety of public and private stakeholders, promoting safety, seeking and adopting innovative technology strategies, employing low-cost, high-impact strategies, making sure that we have an equitable investment in the safety needs of our underserved communities, incorporating evidence-based projects and strategies, and also making sure that the action plan aligns with USDOT's mission. Next slide. So what is included in a action plan? As part of the SS4A discretionary grant program, USCOT identified these 8 items as what they consider as vital for a safety action plan. Those 8 components are leadership commitment, goal setting, planning structure, safety analysis, engagement and collaboration, equity considerations, policy and process changes, strategies and project selections, and project transparency. It's important to note that these 8 components are what we served as our skeleton for our scope of services, which James is going to talk about later on today. And there's more information available of these 8 components on FHWA's SS4A website. Next slide. So when Broward County and the Broward MPO came together, we wanted to make sure that we were on the same page for what we wanted, the outcomes of this safety action plan. So the 3 outcomes we wanted to make sure that the action plan would develop and deliver is a action plan with clear and defined goals to improve the safety for all roadway users, identifying projects and preparing them for funding and implementation, and identifying policies and programs that increase the safety for all roadway users in order to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. These 3 goals, you're going to hear it over and over again today. So we're sorry if we're going to be a little bit repetitive on these goals. Next slide. So after the Broward MPO and Broward County came together and we decided we're going to move forward and this is what we want, we think it's important for you all to know, what we actually included as part of our SS4A grant application and what we wanted to see. Obviously, or unfortunately, Broward County was identified as the 14th most dangerous region in the country, and the Broward County and Broward MPO realized that, and it's very unfortunate. So we decided to pursue the action plan grant, because we couldn't pursue implementation funds at the moment, but we requested the maximum $5 million for the SS4A grant. Thankfully, we were awarded it. But it's also very important to note that Broward County is providing the $1.25 million local match and in-kind services that's going to help develop our plans and initiatives as part of this action plan grant. Next slide. So the second part of our narrative included, what we wanted to do. We didn't just want to talk about what we could do, but what we wanted to do. We want to show that we had a vision to move forward with this action plan. So we in our action plan, we talked about doing a inclusive analysis of facilities, crash out policies, and equity. We want to provide low-cost, high-impact approaches. In our action plan, we're going to identify infrastructure improvements, and we want to make sure that the recommendations that we're providing are informed by the principles of the safe systems approach, as well as various design guidance, such as NACDA, that tends to be a little bit more progressive, especially for vulnerable users. We also want to make sure that we're looking that we look for new technologies that are out there and try to incorporate them in our existing transportation network. And last but not least, we want to make sure that projects are well defined and they're prioritized for short-term and long-term projects. Short-term projects could also be quick build type projects that we want to pursue in the future. Next slide. All right, so the last part of my narrative included talking about how we were going to approach the public outreach part of the safety action plan. We want to continue using our nationally recognized, successful, data-driven, and equity-based public outreach strategies. We're going to employ, or we want to employ, as far as action plan, high-tech and high-touch strategies. We are going to, Broward County and Broward MPO are going to establish a oversight board that's going to be diverse. It's going to include members from the health industry, law enforcement, private sectors, elected officials, and other community champions. We want to make sure that the action plan is developed and well-informed. And overall, moving forward to this action plan, it's important that this action plan looks at safety holistically, around Broward County. It's not just one safety issue that we have in Broward, we have multiple safety issues. And we want to make sure that this safety action plan puts us on a path where we can reduce severe injuries and traffic fatalities to zero. And that's our entire SS4A narrative. Next slide. So once we were awarded the grant, the Broward MPO and Broward County wanted to formalize our agreement and our joint mission to complete this action plan. So we want to ensure that we laid out what we wanted from the action plan, as well as what our roles and responsibilities are. The MOU is available on our SS4A website, but I'm going to go over just a few parts of the MOU. It's not the entire thing. So as part of the MOU, it was decided, or it was formalized, that the Broward MPO is going to lead the procurement process. So the procurement of this RFQ is going to follow the Broward MPO's procurement policies. Now for the action plan, we want to ensure we are going to make sure that we're going to be providing safety recommendations through a variety of different safety lenses for safety needs that both Broward County and Broward MPO identified. We want to also ensure that the action plan incorporates Broward County's ongoing studies into the action plan. Next slide, James. All right, so we also want to incorporate the components of the components that USDOT identified that are necessary for the safety action plan. These are the same 8 components that I mentioned before. The RFQ uses these 8 components. They also include an additional component, which is the project management task, which you all will see in a few weeks once the advertisement is posted on our website for RFQ. Next slide, James. And developing an action plan is great, but we want to make sure that we have a path forward and that this action plan fulfills all the criteria that USDOT identified that's vital for an action plan and that's required in order to apply for implementation funds. We want this action plan to qualify, to move forward. We just don't want this to be a plan that sits on the shelf. We want this to be a plan that, that we can actually do something with and show progress in the future. And I'm going to hand it back to James, and James is going to talk about our path forward.
Thank you. Yeah, we see some questions coming in, and I think some of them we're going to answer with the once we finish the discussion here. I'm putting Gisette on alert to look at one of those questions too. But the point now is we've been talking a lot, and so the point is to get started is quit talking and begin doing. So we want to talk a little bit about our procurement approach. What we're looking for as part of this project is, and Faz will hit a little on it, but we want to reiterate and say it many different ways, is we're expecting to have an outcome that includes an action plan that has defined goals. We expect project lists to come out of this and projects that are ready to move forward towards implementation. Not every idea that's going to come from the group will be ready for implementation, but we'd like to have a process where there is a prioritization and a ranking, and then a further refinement and addressing feasibility of some of those projects that may come out. We want to be looking at some identified funding programs. We know that the Safe Streets for All implementation funding is available, but there are a variety of approaches, including state, local, and even private developer funds. As we look at the highest ranking project, again, there's some criteria that we're going to want to advance that, every idea is not ready to go to construction. So we want to have highest ranking projects, have the team vet them and determine feasibility, develop some cost estimates, initially planning level for some of the more likely ones to move forward, engineering cost estimates, benefit cost analysis, if applicable, and even concept drawings, renderings, maps, images, things of that sort. So among that action plan, project list, we also want to have some policy and guideline recommendations and looking at policies and guidelines that could change at a municipal, county, state, or federal level. And we want to have an approach that we know we won't be able to necessarily implement the changes in the time span of the action plan development, but that there will be an approach to how to move forward in getting some of these changes and recommendations to happen. And then along with that, there's some safety strategies and countermeasure plans. There are various documents that people can refer to, but we hope that we have some innovative approaches from our different consultant teams here and come up with new ideas of things we haven't thought of how to move forward. As we've talked about it, the Broward MPO is going to lead the procurement process. It's a $5 million grant award. The Broward MPO is retaining 10% of that for our grant administration, and the rest will go toward this contract. What we're looking for is a team. And again, it could be a firm by itself, but that's why we left it as calling it a team, but a component of consultants that have successfully implemented Vision Zero or safety action plans. We recognize that this is a large scope and a relatively short time frame. Again, we're aiming for completion so that we can qualify for the 2025 implementation grant funding. And so that's a question of the teams that will have to be able to address that. We want you to be able to reflect your understanding of local transportation conditions. So it's what's going on in Broward, what are some of the policies in place, what are some of the different divisions of responsibility between the state, the city, Broward County, issues with right-of-way constraints, issues of design guidelines versus standards, things of that sort. So being familiar with how transportation works in Broward, funding streams also. We're hoping to have a team that provides us some innovative out-of-the-box thinking. You'll see once we issue the RFQ that it is not totally prescriptive. It gives an outline of what it is that we would like to have the teams achieve and giving you a chance to be innovative in how you approach that scope of work. We have ideas in South Florida of things to do, but we're also hoping that we can get ideas from elsewhere across the country and even internationally, different places of things that can bring us safer conditions, new ideas is what we're hoping for. We expect we'll have some issues with technology deployment. That's an opportunity, and looking at some big data resources. There was a question from somebody here earlier about being open to collecting and analyzing proactive safety data that's not crash data. Yes, we are getting direction from the federal government to not only be reactive in terms of looking at where crashes have occurred, but look at some near miss opportunities, be able to say where things could be happening and possibly apply some measures to address those. Again, this is just a planning study, but it's a question of being able to address that. We hope our teams or expect our teams will bring engineering and planning technical expertise. And very, very important is meaningful public involvement, which is integrated into the whole process. So not just a series of meetings with the community, but involvement that is part of the technical approach, part of data gathering, part of review of alternatives, things of that sort. And they also need an emphasis on underserved communities. Again, part of the direction from the federal government has been an emphasis on safety, but also on addressing our underserved communities. So our timeline, there was another question about when will the solicitation be posted. So we're having our webinar today. For the next 2 weeks, Fazil and I and some of our county partners will be available for pre-bid marketing meetings. So we have a link here on Calendly that you can reserve half-hour times. We wanted to start the conversation midway, so we've given you background on what it is we're looking for. We hope we can use that 30 minutes to have some conversation about how to move your proposals forward. Again, keeping in mind that we have not necessarily issued the official RFQ, so that we are looking to issue in mid-August. And again, allow about a 30-day time for submittals to come in. So by mid-September, we would then expect the submittals to be done. We'll conduct an evaluation and ranking process. Both Broward MPO and Broward County staff will be on the evaluation committee. Once we have ranked, we will then move towards scope negotiation, again with Broward County and Broward MPO participating, and moving toward approval of the contract for our November 9th MPO board meeting. It's an aggressive schedule, and so we're going to keep working toward that. And then once we do have the contract approved, again, we're aiming to be done with the action plan by the end of our second fiscal year there, June 30th, 2025. Again, some resources. So if you didn't get the QR code before, it's here again. We're providing some links to some different websites, information. We've talked about the FHW ASS4A site, the NOFO there, and our Broward MPO website. And I think that was a question here about that. So we can make that available. We will be posting this presentation. We hope to have been posting a recording on our website. and also a list of the participants in the webinar today. So with that, we have finished our formal presentation and are willing to take some questions. Again, trying to keep it easy. We have an ASS4A at browardmpo.org email site, so please reach out to us there. And I'm going to go back to the last slide so that if people do not have the websites there, they can look at it and gather the information there that they need. And again, if you find our MPO, Broward MPO website, we're going to have links to some of these other places too. So.
Correct. And feel free after this webinar to email us at ss4a@browardmpo.org. And we'll get back to you on any questions you all might have in between now and the solicitation, which we're hoping for in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken, James, or the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So let me look at some of the questions that we've got coming in here. Sharing a list of our current on-call consultants. We can share the names of the prime firms. I'm trying to think if those are available on our website right now. So let's make a note of that. But to share that information.
Yeah, and just something else is to add on to what James is saying is we have 3 GPC firms that we have in our GPC library. However, we don't have, for instance, like an open task work order where we can quickly get a consultant on board. It's has to follow the whole GPC process.
So, do we want consulting firms to attend marketing meetings together? That's your choice. You know, we won't give you direct suggestions or recommendations on who to team with. We'll talk to you about these are the kind of areas of expertise that we're searching for. Our executive director recommended find the team you can work with and that you can do a good job. So that's what we would recommend there. And Fazal, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, so we are, since we are going to be posting the attendance list on our website, hopefully between today and tomorrow, that'll give you all an opportunity to start building your teams with some other participants who registered and attended the webinar. Also, when you attend the marketing meeting with us, please be familiar with the documents that we have posted online. We do have a project description that it's a 1-page project description that describes what we're looking for. We have the MOU posted on there. We have our ASS4A application and our MOU. So if you can please be familiar with those, since they are only 30-minute meetings, we're there to answer questions for you. We're not going to go over the scope and things that are already posted on our website. We want to make sure that we're available to answer any and all questions you all might have related to the upcoming RFQ.
While you're talking about the marketing meetings, I do want to switch back a second. We got a question about when we'd be taking marketing meetings. And so we have time in the next 2 weeks. So Fazal, it's between July 30th and August 10th.
August 11th.
August 11th. So between July 30th and August 11th, and here's where to sign up and look for stuff there. There are a couple of questions that are similar about interviews. And so we are expecting, as we evaluate the proposals and rank them, we are expecting that we would request oral interviews with at least 3 firms. So again, I guess a question of yeah, that's our expectation, is that we'll be doing interviews with at least 3 of the top ranked firms.
Correct. So the first part of the RFQ is going to be your written proposals, and then we're going to do a long list and short list, and then as part of the short list, there's going to be oral presentations or interviews, right, James? Yeah.
Combination written and oral. We got a question about DBE requirements. Broward MPO has a DBE goal. We do not have a requirement. Broward County has some requirements, but we are going through the Broward MPO procurement rules, so we will be pursuing our DBE goals. And I looked it up and I don't remember the amount of our DBE goal, but it is, again, it is on our website and we will be making that information available. So, yeah, there's DBE goal for FHWA and FTA funds. And so this is what would apply here is the goal for FHWA funds. So, we also got a question kind of related to the DBE about local preference. And again, Broward MPO using federal funds cannot exercise a local preference. So, we got a question about, based on many current projects, would ongoing regional projects like light rail be considered? So that might be something of a proactive approach also. There is a lot, and for those of you who aren't familiar with details of Broward, the voters approved a surtax a few years ago, and our transit agency, Broward County Transit, has announced a PRIMO plan, which is a premium transit plan, of identified corridors where they will be expecting to implement either rail or bus rapid transit, and other corridors where they're going to be adding more frequent bus service. And I'm going to turn to our Broward County people if they want to add anything on that. But with that, then we are looking at projects that are going to be coming up in the next few years, and keeping in mind, hey, this is a corridor that may be having premium transit. So whatever improvements we're looking at should need to take that into account. Again, any of our county people want to add to that? Want to say anything on that?
Go ahead, Scott. You're just on mute, Scott.
There we go. Thank you, everybody, for attending this. And first of all, but I would say that it is important with all of the things that are happening with the surtax program, including going to, light rail and, more premium transit, that this study should looking into the future, being proactive in terms of how we can make those facilities safer. Because we do have, as everybody knows, one of the biggest safety issues we have is sort of the mid-block crossing activity just 50, 100 feet from a designated crosswalk, during our transit mode operations, persons trying to catch the next bus around the corner or whatever. So I think that's an important part of this, something that I really hadn't thought of. That's a good, excellent question.
Which is one of those things about wanting innovation. So that's why we are looking to you all to help us think of things that we hadn't thought of, out of the box thinking. So yeah, but I agree with you, Scott. It is something that we'll need to plan for the future too. We have a question about planning resources for proposal development and guidance on what would be required in the proposal, if there's a standard format. So we will be issuing the RFQ, again, we were saying in mid-August. And so that will have all the official requirements for this. Broward MPO has a pretty standard template for our procurement documents. So if you're curious, I would recommend looking on our website. I think the link is doing business with the MPO, and there's a section there about past procurements. And so you could look at some of the previous RFQs that we put out. The details are generally the same, but there's going to be some distinction based on this particular grant. That will at least give you a sense of the forms and the template and the standards and what we would expect from the proposal. All right. So I don't see any more questions in the queue. So one just came up. What I want to put on it, let's answer this question, but I want to put our other partners on standby. So Scott, Josette, Mintang, if Richard's still on, Carlos, Basil, if any of you want to add anything, let me go ahead and hit this question that we got in about as the consultant develops an action plan, are they and the partners interested in using software operationally as the plan gets developed? I'm not sure what that means about software operationally. Scott, can you look at that? I'm not sure if that's
well, I guess that's probably a wide spectrum question. I would say that some of the new technologies that we're looking at, we can't implement, but we can pilot test. And so they would have software associated with those. The question could also possibly be related to more of a global integration of everything that's happening with the action plan. And is there a software that kind of tracks, the goals and objectives, tracks what we find, our research and analytics on our outcomes of what's happening now, and then possibly developing strategies and actions, and particularly, new start projects going into the future. So I'm not sure if it's like a technology related software, or if it's a software related to like an ongoing platform to push the program along into the future. So.
And Scott, I'm glad you hit that, and maybe you wanted to, I don't know if you have anything more to say on it, but as we've talked with our federal partners, they've emphasized that this funding is for developing the plan. And so we asked, can we do some tests? And they said it's for developing the plan. So if there's some technologies that'll help us gather data, that's part of developing the plan. If it's technology that's part of a pilot or demonstration project, we can't do it with this grant, but we can set the stage for doing stuff in the future. So again, it's technical of whatever helps develop a planning, the action plan itself. We are wanting to pursue some options to get some pilot demonstration projects going, just not necessarily with this funding stream right now for the grants.
Correct. And also related to, technology and whatnot, we're not just looking for how to make our infrastructure more safe using technology, but we would like to see an innovative technology approach, or have as part of the safety planning, that there's a technology approach, looking at the big data resources that are out there that could be used to help develop some of our more proactive safety needs that we've identified.
Yeah, and I mean, the question could also be, I don't know if Mr. Glassman might want to try to add, but I could also see that in tracking everything that we have going on, kind of in a GIS platform, could even be three-dimensional, where everything is integrated in layers, what is our data saying? Where's our injury, our high injury network? Where are pedestrian, crashes and bicycle crashes, and how are we, can we look at these things biased by equity and neighborhoods, and and then what areas can we target, what corridors can we target, and sub areas and that type of thing. So maybe that's part of it, and that's not a bad idea, because then the action plan becomes sort of a living, active entity, a software platform.
Okay. So now that we're just answering questions too, I wanted to give us a little more face and not just show the presentation. Don't have any more questions coming in. So again, I wanted to throw it out to any of our participants. Scott, you've said some things. Carlos, Mentang, Richard, Josette, anything you would like to add? Fazl and Scott, that's open to you also. And you're muted, Scott. You're muted.
I'd like to get started maybe from the county side and kick a couple ideas off. I think that probably most of the people on this call realize that one of the challenges with converting to a safer environment for all of our users, especially our more vulnerable users, is that there's not a clear, unified safety action program and policy. I think, a lot of the individual jurisdictions have done a great job in doing certain things and having action plans and safety programs and complete streets projects. But I think we've all come across a situation where we're pretty sure that XYZ project or program will benefit the safety for pedestrians and cyclists or transit users, and it may have impacts to the traditional single vehicle occupancy mode. And then staff like ourselves on this call find ourselves in this quandary of, this is what we think we should do, but then it becomes things can become kind of a policy or political football. And so I think a big part of this is that we have got to get that under control and solidified. All of us on this call need to have a clear, accepted, adopted path to go forward so that our elected officials, we have the backing of our elected officials, and that we don't do 180 degree change of direction on some of these projects. And so I think that's really important. And I just wanted to say the second, I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that. But I also think the second key thing is that as we need to shift to more proactive actions and programs. And that's just something that's a pretty big lift. The county, all the agencies are doing certain things. From the county side, we are proceeding with the near miss research project that's currently started. It's underway, and there are different platforms out there that can do near miss. But there's also it's just the concept of trying to use technology and connected vehicle platforms to start identifying trends in crashes and fatalities, and in order to prevent those from happening, rather than being 5 years after the fact trying to come up with an idea, is that we start to see these trends happening in the early stages and trying to harness the technologies for that. And of course, right on our door now is, there's tremendous applications, connected vehicle to infrastructure and all other things. And, there's apps that, are out there now where people can walk and bike, and vehicles with those connected technologies can see them coming up on their onboard system. So there's just a lot of opportunity in that. So I just wanted to kind of say that this is a very varied and wide spectrum undertaking, and looking to see the expertise and ideas from all the teams coming in on this.
Definitely. Thank you, Scott. Yeah. If any of the other county staff would like to say something. If not, that's fine. We want to make sure that that it was clear that our county is providing a local in kind match, and Richard and Mintang and Josette are leading some specific studies that we are expecting will feed data and recommendations into our safety action plan. So as you look through the notes there, keep that in mind, that those are county-led studies that are a local in kind match. We did get a question. I meant to write an answer and I accidentally said I'd answer it live. So who will be on the selection committee? Our evaluation committee will have members of Broward MPO and Broward County staff. We're not making the names public yet, so there will be representatives from both of the partners.
James, something that I just want to add to what Scott was saying and what you were saying earlier. In South Florida, a lot of our policies and design standards are very much geared towards single occupancy vehicles and getting traffic, traffic flow, increasing traffic flow and not affecting traffic flow. Where we want to go is not just from a vehicle-centric, policies and guidelines and standards, but we want to go to a more people-centric, right? Because regardless if you're on foot, you're riding a bicycle, you're taking transit, or you're in a car, you're still a person. And that's the new approach that we want to take. And we want to standardize some of our other approaches, especially, as Scott was saying, when it comes to mid-block crossings and some of these other improvements where we may see that there is a need, but sometimes there's roadblocks such as MUTCD or some other warrants that are required out there that make it very difficult to put the improvements in place, that are logical and ones that are needed. Using, what we're hoping as part of this safety action plan, we would like to see, some of these other big data sources that are out there that help that can help inform some of the decisions that we're making. We know that what we're looking for is a very innovative approach. And this action plan is going to use strategies that have probably never been used in Florida before. But this $5 million, we're hoping to use this towards a safer, environment for anyone and everyone, and to eventually eliminate all severe injuries and traffic fatalities along our roadways. By our, I'm not just talking about the state roadway system or the county roadway system, but also local roads. We are, just because the Broward MPO and Broward County are on this, are leading this effort, we've also had significant communication coordination with FDOT, and they also understand what we're trying to accomplish. And we'll also be working with our state partners and our local partners in trying to achieve this vision that we all see is, very possible. It's going to require us to change our mindset a little bit and change our focus, from vehicles to everyone. But we say it's possible. We see that there's a lot of opportunities available, especially with the new IIJA bill and other discretionary grants that are out there that could help fund some of these improvements in the future.
I see, Scott, you wanted to add something to your hand is up.
Yeah, there was a couple other things that I thought of just in the meantime, and one of the things that I think all of our agencies are coming across is the fact that the speeding issues are continuing to increase in the local neighborhoods, and that's somewhat of a response to increased congestion on our arterial and collector system. And I mean, that's something we deal with our unincorporated area, obviously through our engineering agreements with the cities. We see the same thing happening. We have a lot of people asking us to do speed studies and look at traffic calming and that type of thing. So, that's another aspect of it too. I don't offhand know the data, but we've definitely seen some heat maps where there's a lot of speeding, cut through traffic, and crash incidents in some of the certain areas of the county in residential areas. So that was something that I also wanted to mention as important. Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to build on that real quick too. That there are certain concerns. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your thing. Let me formulate my thoughts a little more. Sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. But I mean, I think that again, are the cities, should the cities have a unified approach to dealing with these issues? I mean, should we try to tackle that as part of this, or should we let the individual agencies, do that, or a hybrid of both? I think that one of the things we want to see out of this study is to where this phenomena is happening. And so that's, I just wanted to mention that. And did you reclaim your thought?
Well, yeah. So we showed a statistic earlier that 85% of the severe crashes and injuries occur on 9% of the roads. But we have conditions in the neighborhoods and different places. That doesn't mean we're going to ignore the other 15% of the severe injuries. It's maybe going to be different kinds of localized solutions and ways to address it. So if we could solve the problems on that 8.9% of the roads and reduce the 85, we still would have issues that we would need to address in these other areas too. So that's intrusion in the neighborhoods and such, that builds on that. We won't, I was going to say we won't be able to solve everything, but that's defeatist. So let's see if we can solve everything and have a plan to address all the different concerns as we go forward. Right?
Yeah, and actually what you just mentioned is a really good, important policy issues, because we can spend a tremendous amount of time on, I hate to say perceived, but it's real for the local residents on their local neighborhood streets But sometimes we do a lot of studies and we find, marginal speeding and little or no crash history. And yet we have these big ticket items where, people are, there's a serious injury once a week. So we have to, as a policy, the reality is we probably need to be responsible, assign resources to where they're most needed. That's not to ignore these other issues, but that's a difficult policy decision that's going to have to be addressed as part of that.
I wanted to throw in something. This is where I was caught between two thoughts, Scott, and that's why we did get a question about somebody saying, hey, that they come up with a solution, but there are impediments. Like somebody says, oh, well, we've always done it this way, or there are other issues in that regard. And maybe we can close up our webinar with this, because I want to throw out some thoughts too. You can tell by my white beard, I've been involved in planning for over 30 years. And there are ideas, working on bicycle planning 30 years ago, there are ideas that we didn't even dare propose that now are pretty commonplace. The idea of lane reduction, assigning space for a buffered bike lane on a roadway was a totally foreign concept 30 years ago in the U.S. I mean, it's rare. I guess some did occur, but it was not that common. And so that's something that I think I'd like to emphasize as part of this approach is there are things that we tried a few years ago that didn't work. And maybe what's the difference? You, as the consulting community, we would like you to be able to tell us how to move past these impediments. What is it that we can approach? Is it just construction? Is it physical projects? Are there programs and policies that need adjustment? At what level of government? How do we approach that? So I guess it's throwing back at, there have been impediments in the past. What do we do? And Scott, I think you're involved with this in in Florida, Wilton Drive. There were years and years of talking about how to narrow the road until they figured out a way to do it. And so it required some, constantly attacking it and taking new perspectives. So I will try to close out my thoughts there. And I don't know if that's thoughts from Scott or any of the others.
Yeah, I would just say, from the county staff's position, I don't want to speak for everybody, but, just my perception is that, the voters passed the surtax. And I'm going to guess my gut feeling is for the primary reason of reducing congestion or preventing it from getting out of control. So the thought to me on that is that that's coming from mostly a single occupancy vehicle commuter in most cases. I mean, there is a huge transit multimodal element. There are pedestrian and other safety improvements, but the challenge is going to be if we're spending money on capacity and roadway widening and signalization improvements, technology improvements, and then we're going to take away lanes to create new bicycle and pedestrian transit facilities. And it sort of becomes a little bit of a paradox, of a little bit of a football, sort of in the political arena. And I think that that's, again, going back to the policy issues, I think that that's a key thing that's going to have to be tackled by the teams. And I hope that some of the teams have experience in just that, because what we know is, converting some of these roadways to complete streets, the right roadway within the right context works beautifully. Tackling something like, a 6-lane Oakland Park Boulevard gets a little more complicated. So, I just kind of wanted to mention that in terms of policy. And
Go ahead. You were going to say something else?
Well, I have one totally different comment. Question really.
Go ahead. Yeah.
How are we, what are the ground rules going to be in terms of consultants meeting with individual MPO or county staff? I mean, is there going to be a cone of silence?
So right now, this is the reason why we wanted to do the webinar a couple of weeks before we issued the RFQ, with the idea that we can have conversations. We don't have an issued RFQ, so it's still an open process. But once we issue the RFQ, then the members of the evaluation committee cannot be out speaking to the consultant community. Any questions need to go through our procurement office, and they will gather those questions. We will confer on providing answers to those and make that available. So that's the point now, is to open up the discussion and share some ideas. And I'm so glad we were able to see the questions that we got and have the level of participation and get some insight from our county partners also, so that you know, we're aware of you know, some of what may be coming forward and something to think about. I will add that whenever I've worked on an evaluation committee and somebody wants to meet with me separately or have a conversation, I'll say, this is great. I appreciate all the input. Make sure that you write that in your proposal, because I'm not the only person who's voting, and we will be evaluating your proposal based on what you provided us in writing. And then if you make the short list in your oral evaluation. So please, whatever you want to share, make sure that you're able to document that and make that available to all the evaluation committee members. So we have 3 minutes left if anybody wants to add anything else. And if not, appreciate the level of interest and the attendance. And again, watch our website for additional information, posting the presentation, the recording, the list of participants, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And we're going to be looking at putting the recording of this webinar hopefully in the next couple of days, and we're going to be posting the PowerPoint slides as well as the attendee list on our website. And just once again, you know, feel free to go to that Calendly link. If you cannot find that Calendly link, you can always find it on the website. An easy way of getting to our website is you can go on Google, type in ASS4A Broward MPO, and it will take you straight to our webpage. It has all this information, all of the resources, and we'll be continuously updating it between now and the RFQ coming out hopefully within the next few weeks. And remember, if you have any questions in between now and then, feel free to send us an email at ss4a@browardmpo.org.
Very good at that, Fazil. Thanks. The ss4a@browardmpo.org. Appreciate it. Okay, take care. We'll hopefully be hearing more from you in the next few weeks, and then when the proposals come in. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.